Hey, and welcome back to the podcast. We're here with Thomas Helfrich from InstantlyRelevant.com. We're going to be talking today about artificial intelligence, about LinkedIn, about warming up and nurturing your leads, and so much more. So, Thomas, glad to be talking to you in very similar looking studios, but of course yours is better.
No, it's not better. It's just my background is faker. No, I'm kidding. It's nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Robert.
Glad to have you. And we last talked maybe like a month and a half ago or so, and you gave me the most important tip as far as that green screen was to get the screen, not the sheet. And it has made all the difference. And I have a setup where I can sit down or stand up. And so I can put in like whatever kind of background. And it's amazing, game changing. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And imagine the tips I'll give in AI. The next evolution is do what I did, which is just build a studio at home. And then that's real behind me, actually. And then that way you just light it correctly. And you don't have to worry about all the green screen. But we're going to get you there. We're going to get you there one day.
Yeah, continuous improvement. What's the point in making everything perfect and building up all the stuff just for it to not be an exact fit? And the same has been my experience with AI, with the Chat GPT. When I tell it to like reduce an article to a certain number of words, or I tell it to like reformat data or tables, I kind of just incrementally use it to solve little problems until it becomes kind of a natural part of my process and my workflow. And so as far as artificial intelligence and what we need to be paying attention, what is your expertise and what, in your opinion, should we be focusing on right now?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking. And I'll set up a little credentials just so they're like, your listeners are like, who is this? So my background is in professional consulting, like big firms like KPMG's, the world, let's say PwC's, but specifically in the last about 10 or 11 years was around intelligent automation and AI systems and consulting on the strategy, implementation, and kind of the business model ROI on those. I pivoted that point of view, understanding those systems into some problems I saw in kind of marketing, networking, sales enablement, and lead generation, where looking at social media of how it's intended to be used by the companies who write the social media algorithms and how people want to use them and how people are. I take that approach when I think about what technologies I can use to accelerate myself, not replace myself. So it's one of the biggest first tenets I'd say that I go with. And if your listeners are trying to figure it out, first of all, take that tenet is use technology to accelerate you, not replace you. And it doesn't mean they can't do some things for you in an automated way, but you got to make sure that the things that count, you are leading that powerful technology with.
That makes a lot of sense. Where at first, I would say probably in the first few weeks of using something like Chat GPT, I was let down, and I had to kind of get over that and then kind of come crawling back, because the promise was that you can say, feed it an article and make it something better, or say, here's some input and I'll create a whole blog post for you. And then when it came back was great, but I felt sort of overwhelmed. I thought like, okay, there's all this text. There's like this 1,000-word LinkedIn post, and I look at it and I just say like something's sort of like soulless about this. Something's missing. And I said to myself, well, I can't just paste this in as is. I have to kind of go through and fix this sentence and change that and kind of add the life back into it. But then I think the aha I had after a few more weeks of that was I said, well, if I were to write this 1,000-word blog post from scratch, it might take me an hour or two or three. But then if it only took me half an hour to go and kind of edit and revise and delete a few things from what it gave me, then that is a productivity boost. So I kind of had to get on board with that new way of thinking.
Yeah, and you're giving a very specific example too of generative AI using large language models to write and create. Where it's really effective is specifically, and you will see that you'll continually see the gains in this as new versions and it gets better. Is when you leverage it as a strategist and combined with an editor, with a ghostwriter, with whatever tonality type of changing. So if you give it a lot of specific information in a big giant paragraph dump of, hey, I think this, I like to write in humor, but don't be salesy. Here's my points of view in these few things. It'll do a great job of correlating that to what are the texts you'll pass into it afterwards, like an article or a blog or some kind of thing that you're trying to create a provocative, rebuttal to, or your own version of it. But if you put enough of your own personal perspectives in it, it'll come out with something pretty good, or something like, yeah, I agree with that. And you can be very good about, hey, could you write the third paragraph only about this, and then, and add more of that, or remove more of this, or use data or something. It's really good for that kind of stuff. And so you can get, what have taken you, if you can do it in a few hours, you're doing great by itself. But if you can reduce the human led one to, even a day or a whole day or several hours to minutes, that's a really good single point of view use case for these AI systems. It doesn't mean you should probably, drop what you're doing to make this your core activity, but if you're just trying to get some content out or write an email and work, or whatever, or apologize to your wife on something, it's not a bad use case to go use it for.
And so what would you say is a good way to describe that mindset? Because as far as like, wrestling with the large language models, it seems like there's the type of strategy that doesn't work and the type that does. And it makes me think back to like back in like middle school when I would say, if I was like helping a classmate write an essay and they'd say like, I don't even know where to start. And I'd say, well, make the first sentence your thesis statement. And so it seems almost like maybe the answer is to get good at the micro decisions, right? Because it's like you say, well, here's some of my parameters and I want humor and here's kind of the bullet points. And then here's the prompt or the input. And then what comes back, you end up revising it. And like you kind of using that example, like, well, change the third paragraph to this or change the beginning to that. It seems like the way to make it work or the way to be happy about it is to just kind of know what you want and know like specifically like to know how to make all these little decisions in a short amount of time. And I mean, am I on track with that? Or like, what would you say is like a good mindset to be able to work with the AI and not against it?
Well, you're describing it the exact way to do it. It helps you get started, and you shouldn't stop there. You should, then read what's produced and be like, my perspective is slightly different on the first section or whatever the area is. My point of view is this, and here's why. And if you have data, great. If not, you could say, grab data, find data that would support this, maybe create an analogy or an example in the real world that would also do this, or a quote that exemplifies this. It's a really good way to go do those section by section. And then you say in the third paragraph, you could go through and say, and here's my details I would add to this kind of broadly held perspective. So you get away from more of the blah or meh, and you could say it more towards how you feel. Or vice versa, if you're in the marketing world, if you're targeting, let's say, an ideal customer profile type that happens to be, and don't judge me on this and anything else, just like maybe they're gun loving, Trump loving, all in the South, they have trucks and just whatever stereotype you want to go throw in that. But you're trying to write to that audience. You can say, here's my audience I'm trying to write to. Write things cleverly that will connect them to these common themes they all have. And it'll do a really good job of doing that elegantly for you.
Well, fantastic. And so it seems like the way to make sense of this is to read a lot and to know about like the structure, right? Because like I think that if someone's not used to cranking out the LinkedIn content or the blog post, then all this big text can just seem like a mess. But you're saying like, okay, if you can look at a piece of writing and say, well, it needs an analogy, it needs a story, it needs an example, then you can just kind of, since you see on a continuous basis enough of the writing and enough of the structure, it works, you can kind of see if there's the missing ingredient or if things are maybe sort of in the wrong order. And so it also seems like by using this AI tool as your buddy, then you can kind of think more high level, more like a boss or strategically. And instead of just like struggling just even to crank out the content, you refine the content to that target audience, like the Trump loving, gun loving people. And so how does this relate to you and your company? Like, I know that you're all about creating like the LinkedIn content and making it like match your profile and match your target market. So that way everything fits and that way you're always kind of getting their attention. So like, how does this relate to instantly relevant?
Exactly. So I take these principles and 99% of the people who start with us start because they want to stop guessing on what to do on LinkedIn to generate revenue. To get revenue, you need a lead. So in our kind of system that we've developed, you'll get leads. It's a given. If you're just, and as a mindset, right? If you're thinking of like, I need more leads, you're thinking about it wrong. You should be thinking of, I need more customers to be promoting me. So we take you through a kind of a whole 9-step system to generate revenue through LinkedIn. And all along the way, you get leads. So it's part of it because that's part of the journey. And it's the mindset that I will get leads because I'm doing these really good things. I've been coached to do it. Our team make sure that you have the right ideal customer profile segmented, think really good sales navigator lists that are segmented. We make sure we have content written and created that's going to resonate with that ideal profile or that profile of one. And then finally, your profile is being optimized continuously to relate and to be relatable and relevant. to whoever ideal customer profile you're currently kind of targeting and that content that goes with it. So those three things at a high level work together, because once we start engaging with your audience as you, right? So, or we teach you how to do this, those things start stacking up as factors of building known, like, and trusted. So you get to be known by engagement, you'll get to be liked a little bit through some dialogue and through some messaging, and you'll get some credibility established, so they become from a skeptic kind of trusting of you before they've really kind of, you have an opportunity to build them as a customer or a prospect or beyond. Because once you establish that, we use AI along that way to improve the process, to improve the quality, more consistency, give us speed, so you can have speed, quality, and good cost, good value as well. Because right now you can get an advantage in that, and then later on we'll have to pivot to something to give you all three of those sides of the triangle at once. But that's how technology enables us. It's still human-led. It doesn't mean it's expensive. It just means it's going to be higher quality. It's going to have more control. It's going to keep you in brand. But we use technology to accelerate, not really replace where needed.
And that's exactly what you were saying when we started this, of don't replace yourself, just kind of augment what you already have going on. And warming up your leads, what a concept, right? And like you mentioned there, that some people just say, oh, well, I want the leads. But then you and I both know that, well, there's like how wide you want to go and how deep you want to go. And some of those leads are not going to buy from you, but they'll be more like your referral sources. That are people that like and share and comment and kind of pump you up. And so it's maybe a little bit of a mess of a system to figure out, but it's like more strategic, right? And you say, well, here's kind of my step-by-step plan. Instead of just saying, here's the leads, let's just blast them, let's just spam them. You have this kind of concept of warm them up with the content, get them to engage with what you post. That way you can kind of get more and more in communication. And then they're revising the profile. That's interesting too, because I can't even really explain it, but like I look at maybe like a couple of hundred LinkedIn profiles every week, just from the leads I'm going after and the people I'm adding. And like when I see all these profiles filled in, like you can almost tell which ones are updated regularly, right? You can tell the ones where they just like, they sign up for LinkedIn, they filled in the profile and they were just done, and that was 5 years ago. But you can kind of almost get like this weird sixth sense of like how they tweaked and changed what's in there, and like changed the background and changed the button and like changed the little byline. And so what do you what's that like as far as going back and like kind of regularly updating that LinkedIn profile? Is that like a twice a year, once a month thing? And like, what do you look for when you keep that profile up to date?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I just wanted to give your audience one more takeaway to just from a mindset. There are no shortcuts to this. We've been doing this for years. I've been building a great network for years. And if you want have a relevant network that's going to care about any of the things we're talking about, know that there's no shortcuts. If your business, if you're okay, spamming people and trying to just grab a cash grab, you're just not going to probably be in business a few years from now, because your brand is going to bleed out to spam. And that's where you're going to head out. It's going to be impossible to get out of it, really, or very difficult or very expensive. So just know that mindset. Now, when it comes to like profile optimization, how often, there's a bit of a depends, but recommended is once a month. And typically we'll do this with our customers, but it's got to, ideally though, from an execution standpoint, it needs to identify and be relevant to the profile of the person that you're trying to get this attention, because our biggest metric is how many profile views you're getting, because that's your billboard. So like if you're driving down the road and you see a billboard, if they never change it, you stop seeing it after a few times driving by. So we want to make sure as your network drives by your profile that your statements are different, like your headline, your banner images, your call to actions, they're updated regularly to trigger a different set that will relate to that. And so we work through those monthly with you, because it's just really important to keep it fresh and keep you, as you described, right, as one who's clearly active and involved and ahead of others in your group by doing that.
That makes a lot of sense, because it might seem, I don't know if it's like, it like feels like too much work or something, or it's like something where it requires this really like deliberate discipline in order to update it. But that's kind of a mindset that I find myself having to get over, right? Like you see, like there's these like public speakers update their whole website every like 1 or 2 years, and it's like, oh, do I really have to do that? So much work. But you're so right in that there's the ad blindness, where if someone just, even if someone keeps seeing your profile and the recommended things to add, if they just see it's the same old thing, same old picture, same old background, same old headline, then eventually they'll stop seeing it. And I also I'm guessing, but only guessing, that maybe LinkedIn probably rewards you for updating your fields as well, right? Like if there's like 2 different LinkedIn users and one never updates and one updates regularly, I imagine that their algorithm would probably show you slightly more if you were the kind of person that updated your profile, right?
I don't think their algorithm directly would take that into consideration. What we consider putting into consideration is how people are engaging with your profile. By updating it, people will have higher engagement levels. If you're doing content, people will visit, they'll interact more. That makes it share more. That's what the algorithm triggers. It's an effect of some of the things you'll do. And one of the reasons why people don't update regularly is because as simple as it seems, right? The difficultness is in the simplicity, because you have to have a creative eye or a team to create the banner image to make it look, there's 3 main questions you need answered in your profile. And they need to be done kind of in this order specifically. And I'll tell you why in a second. One is, why should I click on your profile? And that's the first 7 words of your headline and your image, your head image. And number 2 is, what does it do for me? They land there. Don't tell me what your website is. Don't tell me with the word we or our or me or whatever else. Land on your banner image to tell me what it is you do for me, but make it slightly teasing so that you want to go back down and read your little headline, because all that put together really is done in a way that drives the idea that you're going to a call to action. And that call to action should not be the name of your website. It should tell me why I should click that button. So that 3 questions of why should I click on your profile, what does it do for me, and why should I take your call to action are the 3 things you need to always be answering on your LinkedIn profile at a bare minimum, and they need to be updated regularly.
And this is what I like about LinkedIn, is that when, let's say, like Facebook and Twitter took off, I felt really lost. So it was like social media came out, and it was like this whole other different sort of environment. And then it was like selling it as bad, and it's more about just getting the likes and the clickbait. But then when I kind of became more of a regular LinkedIn user, like 2 or 3 years ago, things made more sense to me, and it kind of came back to basic copywriting, right? Like what you're talking there, like doing the micro commitments and the bucket brigade, how it's just like your micro goal is to get them to click on your profile from the first 7 words. And once they do there, then your micro goal is to get them to just see what's in it for me. And from there, the micro goal is to get them to see the rest of your profile and go and click. And so it makes a lot more sense to me as far as like making this actually work and making this pay off, instead of just like how some of these other social networks like Facebook, it's like, sure, it's great, but then it's just the rules seem all out of whack over there. And so LinkedIn makes a lot more sense, where people are there looking to network and maybe looking to buy and looking to connect. And it seems like finally we can not have to fight it or try to sneak it in or make the sales work with social media. So as we're winding down our conversation here, you've given us so many cool tips and many things that I feel like I even need to go back and watch the recording and apply some of these little things that you said. Is there anything that you think is really missing as far as people's LinkedIn strategy that maybe is not being discussed enough?
Well, yeah, there's a lot. And what we've described are some kind of those core things are probably the foundational core set of 3 things you need to do. And I'm oversimplifying it to some degree just for the purposes of that's your general idea. There's a lot of nuance and hashtags and things like this. I think where a lot of people are missing on the strategy is they're being too passive and not completely intentional or within a niche of what they can solve. And a lot of times they're not taking the effort to go from kind of being unseen to revered in that connection phase. So I look at the LinkedIn journey. If you're out there to try to get leads or even try to get a job or whatever you're trying to do, you have kind of 3 phases of this core, what I described with who should you connect with, what kind of content should I create, what should my profile look, to the second phase of this kind of connection where you're engaging, you're driving dialogues, and you're building credentials to become known, liked, and trusted in a relevant way, which accelerates that. And then the final phase is really converting people from being kind of, they're browsing you, they're either maybe, considering you, to really becoming a patron or even promoting or being an endorser of you. And the strategy to do that is a really methodical way to do this. Like there's a system you should be following to methodically do this. So even if things don't work out for you along the way, the people had the right experience, and you end in a positive, even though you didn't get the outcome you wanted. Because those often come back to you as that person was the best at what they did, even though I wasn't ready to buy, or I wasn't ready to hire, I wasn't ready to do whatever they wanted me to do. They were the best experience. And I've had this in our business a lot, where people come back 6, 7 months, 9 months later, and they're like, hey, I've been trying to still find it. I remembered yours. And every time, I think about like that guy was the best way of doing it. And now I'm ready. And I'm like, great. And if you can have that same experience for whatever you're doing, your strategy should be very methodical and intentional, and stick with it. But seek some help might be the piece that's missing. Like if you haven't done this, tens of thousands of times, you're probably guessing. And so stop guessing, and find some help. Me or if me or somebody else in your network, fine, but just get some help. Like actually ask someone who knows what they're doing.
I love it. Get some help. Stop guessing. Stop rolling the dice. And I love your thought process as far as LinkedIn goes. A lot of people, they teach kind of like the word strategy is overused, right? People just like they have a magic trick, or they say here's some things to do. But the way that you're talking about it, you're saying like there's these different phases, and there's specifically things you do in these different phases to kind of move somebody along. And then if they get to the end and there's someone that's kind of falling off the funnel, that's fine. You have more fish in the sea, but then you can kind of look at the different buckets and say, well, am I lacking in this, or does this need more work? And all of that makes things a lot more doable, because it's all in the name of not guessing. If your system is just a mess, you're guessing. But if your system is kind of working and you say, well, phase number 3, I need to be doing something a little different, then that's kind of troubleshooting the system and breaking down the problem. That seems like a way better way of figuring out our LinkedIn strategy. And I imagine that most people don't have a LinkedIn strategy at all. So if they need to, not just if they want, but if they want and need to get that LinkedIn help from you, then what's the next step? How do they go to Instantly Relevant, and how do they find you, and what should they be doing?
Of course, you go to instantrelevant.com, see what we have there. That site changes about once every 6 months. It's about to go through an overhaul again whenever this airs, but likely whenever you're hearing this, it's probably going to go through a change again soon. But we're generally a LinkedIn business. So you can connect with me at LinkedIn at Thomas Helfrich. Tell me you heard the podcast. But here's the special offer I'll do for anybody who actually got to this point in the podcast. Get a pen out, get your note taker, get ready to write down a number. I'm going to take a pause. You should be ready now. But here, don't call me because I don't pick up numbers I know. But here's my personal cell phone you can text, and I will find time with you. If you say, hey, I heard you on this podcast, and I texted you because you said text me, I will actually find time with you one-on-one to hear about what's going on in your world. It's 314-954-6900. That's actually my phone. This one right here. Holding right there. Like I said, if you call, I don't know the number, I won't pick it up. But if you text me and say, hey, this is my name, this is where I heard you, text 314-954-6900. Because you gave me the time, Robert, to get on your podcast, I'd love to give some of your audience some time to get some real value out of a 20 or 30 minute meeting.
Nice. That's very generous of you. And it's always fun to put in the little, whatever you call it, like the Easter egg, or the little hidden like scarcity gem for someone to like reverse, or have your pen out and write down that phone number and send the text to that 315 number that you said and that you heard. What's that?
Well, hopefully I said it right. 314.
314. All right. So
Michigan, that might be Iowa. I'm not sure where that is, but it's 314-954-6900.
It's like we're on a radio show here. So the 314 number that you said out there, and send the text and say that you heard about this on the Robert Plank Marketer of the Day podcast. Step number 2, go to LinkedIn and add Thomas Helfrich. That is last name Helfrich. And then step number 3, go to instantlyrelevant.com and do all those 3 steps. Send the text, add Thomas on LinkedIn, and then go to that website. That way you can be plugged in and know what your next step is as far as LinkedIn, and no longer guessing, but actually having a strategy. And so thank you so much, Thomas, for giving us some really cool ideas and really cool things to think about. And I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Robert, for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise.